Well, hello there. How is everyone? I hope you're all well on this stupendous Sunday. That's it, baby. It's Sunday. It's stupendous. And I hope you're all having a fantastic weekend so far. You're looking absolutely amazing, so I'm guessing you are. And in this video, I'm going to be talking about, and I bring this situation, certainly my speaking on the situation, to a close. Because recently we've seen the takedown, if you like, of the Goncalves family page. And the comments around it and the fact that it happened has split the room. Split the room hugely, as we see kind of two camps now. There's the camp that feels that this was a family that was silenced, and the second camp, which is of the mindset that no, this was a page, a vessel that ended up as just a I don't know, it was just like a camp hatred. But even when you go down the route of saying, look, this place was just perpetuating just grotesque comments towards a person who was kind of accused of doing a crime, the argument was, yeah, but that's still people's opinion. So we have a freedom of speech violation here, because people should be allowed to say what they want, you know, to express their opinions. And that's what I want to address here. That's exactly what I want to address in this video, because it is really that question, and was the taking down of that page an attack on freedom of speech or freedom of expression? And indeed, as JB Gunner, and I'm going to go through some comments on JB Gunner's page. Look, and with respect of myself and JB Gunner, there are things that we do not agree on. But what me and JB will show and show the community is that despite having polaring opinions on certain aspects of the Idaho 4 case and numerous other areas of life, there are things that separate myself and JB massively. But from a business perspective, which YouTube is our business, then we are able to put those aside and show people that you can debate with someone who has polaring opinions to yourself, and you can do it in a manner that doesn't mean that you have to name call, that you don't have to belittle people, you don't have to vilify people, you just simply be grown up and adult about it. And I just see consistently in the comments that people struggle with that. And sadly, and I will have to say this, that the majority, not all, but the majority of the people who result to name calling and being nasty towards people come from the Brian Kohberger is guilty camp, because that seems to be their resort, that they just have to just attack the individual, because when they're challenged, in reality, there isn't anything that challenges their position of feeling that or saying that Brian Kohberger deserves to be executed at this time, because he doesn't deserve to be executed at this time. You can think it, you can comment on your thoughts and feelings about it, but there is nothing around this case yet that has been stamped as absolute fact. Every single individual element of the evidence that you want to raise, that is yet to be stamped and said that is right. That is absolutely accurate. There is no reasonable doubt around it. That's his car. That's his DNA. That's the process that found it. This is where he was. That's the proof that he did it. So yada, 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 and a conclusion via a jury. Brian Kohberger, as it stands from a legal perspective, he is innocent of this crime. He has yet to be proven guilty. And that's where the issue comes from with respect of the Goncalves family page. Now, look, it has been come out that I believe it was Olivia who turned around and said the page had been taken down for impersonation. That's why it was taken down. Now, obviously, they've had to address the fact that it was taken down. It wasn't something that they could simply ignore, because ultimately there was a lot of people on there. There was a lot of people who was on there daily. There's a lot of people who donate and have donated to them and sent them things. So it was the right thing to do to address it. Now, with respect of impersonation, can pages be taken down for impersonation? Yes, they can. They certainly can. It's not beyond the realms of possibility. I just feel that at this stage, I'd keep an open mind on that. I have had multiple people who have come to me and they have stated that they had reported the channel for hate speech. And look, hate speech is going to be seen incredibly serious on this page, especially at the moment with what we see in the world. And look, maybe we'll find out, maybe we won't. I don't know whether the Goncalves family would be able to come out in the affirmation and say, yes, the page got pulled down for hate speech. And look, maybe there's some truth to the impersonation side of things. My only argument there would be if the page was pulled because of impersonation, it would be quite easy to get that turned around. But time will tell, time will tell. But I do know that the page contained hate speech and people had reported it. I think it was Evil CJ, and I touched on this the other day. He had done a thread that showed multiple comments that were citing violence towards Brian Kohberger in quite a grotesque manner. That is inciting violence, and that is going to get you pulled. Even if you do not think that they deserve to get pulled, you're a public platform. There are community guidelines that says you can't incite violence, and that page was inciting violence. And look, with respect of, let's just have a look. We're going to have a look at some of the comments around this. And look, me and JB Gunner do not have the same opinion. He obviously raised my opinions in this video that he did, which was silenced, and he very firmly took the stance that Steve Goncalves had been silenced. He's a father who's lost his child. He has the right to an opinion. He has the right to talk about the Idaho 4 case, just as much as content creators have the right to talk about this case. But there is a big but, and that is there is a massive difference between a content creator on YouTube talking about the Idaho 4 case. Someone like myself, for instance, and don't get me wrong, there are content creators out there who have overstepped the mark. They've gone way over the line. But with respect to channels like myself, I think that questioning things that are already out in the public, going through the court documents with people, I believe it was Jules of All Trades, who turned around and said, you know, we was put on a list of people who deserve to be pulled down, taken down. And in reality, I'm thinking to myself, well, hold on a second. Like, most of the things that we discuss, that we were not the origin of that. And we certainly haven't even gone down the road of speaking in depth about certain things, such as there are a lot of people out there who are literally saying that Steve Goncalves was involved in the deaths of these individuals himself. Now, I have not spoken about that in an affirmative way or in any way, shape, or form believe that he was involved in the murders of his own child and her friends. I don't think that's a rabbit hole that I've not gone down, and there is other things around this that I certainly haven't touched on in an affirmative way. I've certainly discussed a lot of things that have been put out by other people, and we've spoken about it and discussed whether it's plausible, whether it's not, and I've been speaking in a manner that would say, look, some of these things are quite plausible and you certainly can't take them off the table. And why do I say that? Because, again, as aforementioned, Brian Kohberger has not been proven guilty. So until that happens, there is a potential that there is another story here. But let's just go through some of these comments. And this is just what I put, which JB pinned. I put freedom of speech and expression is fine, and I'm all for it. It's certainly something that we do not have in the UK anymore, which to a certain degree we do not. And I believe that even the US, I think they have an illusion of freedom of speech, but you don't. It just gets chipped away at. You know, it gets chipped away at in quite sneaky ways, and before you know it, you've reached that tipping point, and you look back and think, oh, fuck, wait, how did we get here? But the issue I have with Steve Goncalves' situation and their page is this. The page was not about simply freedom of expression and freedom of speech. It became a vessel of hatred. Threats and the promotion of manipulated information designed to drive hatred towards an individual yet to be found guilty of any crime with 60 to 80,000 members. It posed a genuine risk to this individual, and that is why this page was likely terminated. Again, this comes off the back end of multiple people messaging me to to explain that they had, I believe it was the Mother's Day post that was put up with the Goncalves family wearing death row, tops, and the comments that was under that thread was absolutely horrendous. Again, I believe if you go onto Facebook and search the page, one of the top things that come up is Evil CJ's post, where he just lists the multiple messages on that thread. They are horrendous, and they will get you removed from that platform. So whether they want to say that you was impersonating someone, those alone will be enough to get that page taken down. That's just the way it is. Did Steve not utilise this page to speak of things such as BK stargazing and how this was a stupid alibi? Now, I don't believe Steve is stupid, so this is just one of the few examples of Steve using his page to undermine the case. You and I both know that it's not what, it's just, I'll learn to read in a minute. Both know that it's not just what we as individuals say on our channels that places us at risk, but it's also our comment section. When we get to a certain point and we garner a certain degree of followers and a community, we have a responsibility to protect those that are placed at risk because of what we have created. This is why we have the ability to control words, and that may have to be blocked or set strict measures to filter comments. We can be held accountable. So when people turn around and a comment goes, right, and I had somebody who'd been around the channel for a long time, and they're like, why are you taking my comments down? Why are you not letting me address JB? I'm guessing that there was something being said directed at JB in a negative, derogatory term. I don't know. But I have the parameters of my comment section set to strict to protect the community and to protect the channel from what has very likely happened to the Goncalves page. That's just the world that we live in. That you have to think about what you're saying. There is a difference between freedom of speech and freedom of expression, and getting into a position where the community that you've built is literally saying that they want someone to be dead and for people to line up and shoot them in the head. I did a video the other day. There was literally a person in the UK that is in prison for arguably comments that are not as serious as the ones directed at Brian Koberger on the Goncalves family page. Prison. They are literally in prison. A mum with a daughter and a husband in prison for comments that were not as bad as the ones that were floating about on the Goncalves family page. Now, anybody can argue and say, yeah, but that's wrong. That's wrong. People should be able to get upset and get pissed off. But the guy is not guilty of a crime. It could be argued that, yeah, okay, you can have an opinion and say, oh, he deserves this, he deserves that, I wish this could happen to him, I wish that could happen to him. But then it's all about timing, isn't it? It's the relevance of the comment to the situation. What you're seeing in this situation, I'll come back to this in a second, is Steve Goncalves is upset, mad, angry, and distraught, and his family is because they've lost a child. Now, because law enforcement's investigation have pointed at that bloke and said this is the guy that did it, they have made the decision to ignore some of the issues with the investigation, ignore the fact that there's other DNAs there, tell people off platform that they believe that there's other people involved in the situation as a multiple perpetrator crime. They've kind of concluded that it's Brian. Simultaneously, they have gone out into the public and done these interviews that seem to suggest that they know information. There's more stuff to come out. There's going to be stuff that comes out that's gross. Literally a statement made by Steve Goncalves. And look, I don't hate Steve Goncalves. Like JB Gunner said that it's clear that I hate Steve. No, I don't hate Steve Goncalves. Again, I speak all the time about I have empathy for their position, but their position doesn't give them the right to do certain things that they've done. That's the issue that I have. You're not given carte blanche to just do whatever you feel is necessary when you're placed in a position of pain, anguish, upset. We can all be suffering from a pain, anguish, and upset. But it doesn't give us the right at that point to go and attack someone who is yet to be proven of what they're accused of. And certainly doesn't give you a right to build a platform that's primary focus in the end, by the end of it all, was to literally say that the guy needs to be killed, needs to be shot in the head, and for people to line up and do it. The guy is legally innocent. How can people not see that that is not right? Yes, I'm all for freedom of speech, freedom of expression, but fucking Jesus, do you know what I mean? It's bewildering to me that some people cannot see the problem with this page. Let me just carry on through this, and we're just going to touch on a couple of comments because it's fucking believable, right? Under my case, blah blah blah. Where was we? Where was we? Yeah, we can be held accountable, which we can. So if I ever remove a comment, it is because it gets to the point where I think this is going to head in a direction that could affect the platform. There was a time and there was a place. What happened there? There was a time and there was a place and there was a line. This page and the people on it, they crossed that line. And then I put, you must also understand that there is a huge difference between someone with absolutely no connection to this case sharing an opinion and asking questions and discussing information out in the public, and the actual family of a victim building an entire community that absolutely did have the ability to impact the case. Again, I cannot stress enough that it is a fact that Steve Goncalves on multiple occasions had made statements that suggested he was privy to information not known to the public that supported Brian Kohberger's guilt. Fast forward to where we are now and look at what came out publicly via media that Steve himself was connected to. This is merely a coincidence. People who state the argument, so it's okay for Harsh to speak about the case, but it's not okay for Steve then, missing a very, very important point here, and that is no channel on YouTube has the ability to affect this case. You, me, Lana, Jules, Jay Ombre, Crime Circus can talk about this case until hell freezes over, but it won't make a difference. However, the victim's parents, with a vast media presence, does have the ability to indirectly affect constitutional rights of Brian Kohberger due to their proximity to the case, the trust that people have in them, and the added emotional attachment. And I didn't even mention in here the fact that they have literally, by their own statements publicly, said that they are out in the community where there is very likely going to be jurors pulled from and interviewing them and having discussions with them about this case. I can't, how fucking more clear can it be, their ability to affect this actual trial? I believe freedom of speech matters up to the point where it turns into something else that then looks to affect the rights of another. That is 100% what happened here. And then someone put, I don't understand why my comments never appear on your channel. Do you believe in free speech? If it gets to the point where you've been banned from the channel, then I've banned you for an absolute valid reason, because I've not banned that many people. And in fact, when I got to a certain amount of people, I did unban everyone at one point during a live. It's not a threat to wear a death penalty shirt or speak freely on any and all opinions and oppositions. Free speech and expression is a constitutional right. You don't have rights in UK country. G Family page was taken down by goobers mass reporting for impersonation. So again, this is completely speculation. The fact that they're saying that it was taken down for impersonation and they've put that in capital letters doesn't ignore they've completely ignored the fact that there are people who were on that channel saying that Brian Kohberger should be shot by the families. And they're turning around and saying that it's not a threat to wear a death penalty shirt. It's the timing of it, and it's how it was done. And these people, I don't want to. It's so hard not to, they're obviously turning around and talking and calling us goobers or taken down. I didn't report the fucking channel. I don't give a monkeys about their fucking page. But taken down by goobers, mass reporting for impersonation. To say the family should be able to carry out the punishment is not threatening. Many Americans agree with that notion. Nobody should be acting as a silencer. Popo. And I just think, are you fucking kidding? This is where you can't fucking understand the difference between when it's relevant to have an opinion. There is so much more involved. And that's why, generally, freedom of speech is going to get taken away from people. Because you give someone an inch and they take a mile, and people think that that's cool. Yes, you can have an opinion. Yes, you can wear a death penalty shirt. But is it right to have an opinion about someone and say that they should be executing people and they deserve to be executed and wearing this death penalty shirt and drumming up the hatred that it did when a person has not yet been accused of the crime? And I'll tell you what, it's going to be the guilters who feel that that's okay. That's going to be the guilters who have concluded that Brian Coburg's guilty. They will all be okay with this, every single one of them, because they want Brian Kohberger dead. And then you'll have the other side that are Brian Kohberger is innocent. They will hate this. And then you'll have the people down the middle where there will be a mixture. And what that proves is this isn't a freedom of speech issue whatsoever. This is just what side of the fence you're on, and this is part of your argument. You're going to use this to, again, try and attack the other side and accuse them. And I just get bored of talking to people who can't work it out. Real harsh, where your punctuation. No one should ostracize Steve. He does not put information out. He reacts. He reacts. He doesn't put information out. He reacts. Are you fucking kidding? Are you actually kidding? He literally said that Brian Kohberger was touching this house's Wi-Fi. He literally said that Brian Kohberger had a kill kit. He literally said that Xana Kernodle's door was shut and that Hunter had come over because he had to open it. And then later on, when that proved to be incorrect, false statement, he did not address it and be accountable for that. He has literally said that he is going out into the public and interviewing people who could be potential jurors. I'm not fucking lying. That is what was said. That is what was said. And this page, the Goncalves family page, was, whether you fucking like it or not, was getting to the point where they were threatening to kill someone who is yet to be proven guilty of the crime. Do I have an issue with freedom of speech? No, I absolutely doesn't. If freedom of speech sticks within the realms of the law, doesn't turn into incitement of violence, and the downside is that people are so fucking stupid they can get rolled up by words and get to the point where they could actually go out and hurt someone. It's happened before, it will happen again. Why do you think that there are things like shootings all over the US and that? Because they listen to fucking idiots and they're brain dead and they get themselves manipulated by ideologies or people, and it spirals out of control, and before you know it, you've got a load of minors who have been decimated because of speech. Speech is dangerous in the wrong hands. That's as simple as that. Yes, I'm all for freedom of speech, but people have got to be held accountable when that freedom of speech crosses a fucking line, and that page crossed a fucking line. Simple as that. Don't agree with me? Fuck off. Love you all. Mwah.